Indeed. So is that going to be your final background? Is that
No,
no?
I'm just delaying
Ah.
it. I
What are
gotta
you
fix it,
What are you going to fix? Like, what is the dream for
Well,
that
I
background?
gotta finish the wall. I want to finish the wall, and then I'm thinking about getting like a nice green screen where I can do cool stuff, but
Oh,
we'll see.
yeah. Build the wall, man. Got to build the wall.
I gotta finish the wall. Build the wall.
Don't do
I
what
can get
Biden's
Mexico.
doing and tearing it down.
I can get someone else to pay for it, like Trump. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just throw some tariffs on someone else that has
Yeah.
no responsibility for your wall, and they'll pay for it. Apparently,
There you go, man.
that's
There
what
you go.
happens.
We got some people watching us talk about nothing. I like that. I like when we start the shows talking about nothing. They get a little window into our insanity a little bit.
Yeah, well, absolutely. It's a little insider baseball, and it's a little more time for people to find us because we're only on two places now: YouTube and Periscope.
YouTube is those days are numbered as well. So
Those
we'll
are
be on
very
Periscope.
numbered. Hopefully, Torba can get that live streaming going on with Gab.
You don't
soon.
even do that at all on How to Build a Tent anymore, do you?
No, I don't. And I, in fact, don't even have How to Build a Tent anymore. I transitioned to the Matt Williams show this week. Although no one knows it because our shows aren't showing up on the Fight Laugh Feast network.
Well, good. Now I don't feel bad not knowing. I was starting to watch you a lot more regularly before this past week. This past week's been crazy, but your show's been great, man. I'm glad.
you.
I liked it. The Matt Williams show. That's good.
Yeah, I just I don't really have confidence in anything in the private sector anymore, so it's kind of bad to have a show about that. And I just thought, it's time to shift. I'm not really talking about starting businesses anymore. So
we're kind of in the same boat there, man. I was talking to you before that we went live, man. This week has been brutal. I feel like I'll never close a deal again in my life. Never. Despairing. I'm just total despair right now.
You just got to move south, man. You just got to come to Florida, dude. Everyone's moving here. You'd make a killing.
Yeah. Listen, Florida would be great. I'll tell you right now, DeSantis is he's doing the right thing. I like it.
Yeah, he's doing the right thing. It's so funny. People are talking about, like, will he run for president? Will Pompeo run for president? There was like a teaser of him on the Sean Hannity's show last night or whatever. Like, that is a fine line. I don't know if we talked about that last week. That's going to be a fine line for you to walk. Where if you want to run against Trump, like, how are you going to get that base?
I don't think anyone can do it. I mean, how is that going to happen?
Yeah, I don't know. The only way it's going to happen is if he doesn't run. But then I think Junior runs, and then that's going to be weird. But yeah, Mark. Hey, Edward, Mark. Let's see, Debbie. Welcome, guys.
Debbie, yeah.
Let's see. He said wood is skyrocketing like crazy. It is. It really is. I was just doing some cost analysis for some things that we're building for the school and stuff like that down in Cape Coral, and one of the builders said for a commercial building, it was 4x building materials prices right now for that. Crazy, which is, you wouldn't think that in a recession or like wherever we are, right?
Don't worry, Matt. I was listening to Jerome Powell today, and he said that inflation's totally fine. Like, they need to get more inflation. Like, we're not quite at the optimal inflation point yet. We need to be a little higher than where we're at.
It's so crazy. So and a lot of people are missing this because it's not as sexy as the Wall Street's bet and the GameStop thing. But that same thing is happening right now in the bond market.
Oh man, yeah.
And it's really interesting. And this is going to get really nerdy. Maybe we shouldn't talk about this for too long. But
probably
I find
not.
it really
but just go ahead.
Okay. So I was even reading a Ben Bernanke article. I think you saw that when I shared it on Gab. Is they're trying to keep interest rates low, and they do this by a number of tools the Fed has. But the bond market is skyrocketing. The 10-year treasury, which is where you base your mortgages off of, there's a lot of things that get based off of that. And it's going to be driving up prices. And they do everything they can to keep that low. I mean, I think the lending rate right now is at 0.25. It's been like that since the recession of 2008. So what do they do now? Negative interest rates are probably coming.
Negative interest rates are probably coming. So I did listen to Jerome Powell today. I never do. I just was interested just to see what he's saying,
Yeah.
And he was talking about how when they're in a situation like this, they've got to get their tools back. And what he means is they have to be able to do something besides negative interest rates, but there's really no place to go now. So they have to do it. What else would this is their only tool. This is all they have.
And then just starting like printing in the QE printing press again. Those are the only two tools I think they have left.
Right. It's a very interesting situation. And the guy who was interviewing him was a friendly, was a White House, economic correspondent, whatever. And so it was a friendly interview.
Yeah.
But even the friendly interview, he doesn't want to answer any questions. He's just like, yeah, we're just going to do whatever it is to meet our objectives. And he just kept saying that over and over and over. And like, there's no answers coming. It's just printing press, rates. That's about it.
Yeah, man. You think about all the institutions that have been corrupted and been obviously proven to be that in 2020, 2021. I don't think the Fed is there yet for a majority of people. Like, obviously, there's people like us that think shady things are probably happening around the Fed and like what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing. But I'm still waiting for that shoe to drop. I think God is going to do that as well. He's done every other institution.
Right. Why not? That's a huge one. I mean, that's one of the primary ones you see in the Old Testament,
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, so negative interest rates will probably do that.
Oh, man. Brutal.
I don't think we've ever had negative interest rates ever in the history of the country. That would be huge. That'd be really huge. So, like, what do you do? That's another thing. Go back to the show shift. Is I don't even know how to operate in negative rates.
It's so crazy. It is so insane. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you do?
I don't know. You can't save money. It's a tax on money. That's what it is. It's basically an additional tax on your savings.
It's just a way to so obviously Democrats are not scared of raising taxes for certain people, but they want to raise taxes for everybody, but it's very unpopular to actually do it. So they do it like this. So nobody really can tell this is a tax raise, but it is.
Yeah. Exactly right. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting. I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, disaster is going to happen.
By the way, it's a tax that hurts the poor the most.
Oh yeah.
By far, it's like it's not even close. Like, yes, people that are wealthy, people that are middle class, they're going to get hurt too. But I was saying this in a show the other day, like, $1,000 is $1,000, but it's a lot more meaningful depending on where you're at on the wealth curve. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. It's a higher percentage of your wealth or your income. Yeah, I know. And so Edward is saying he just refinanced with a VA loan, got 1.7%. I am going through a refinance right now, and I think it's like 2.3. It's a conventional, but the rate shot up 50 basis points, or that's fancy term for half a percentage, in a month. I don't remember that ever happening to the 10-year Treasury. 0.5% in a month. That's like astronomical. That doesn't like carry over where interest rates for your home loan is going to go up 0.5%. It's exponentially going to go up from that.
Oh man!
So if you got a refi in now, you're in good shape.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
crazy.
What a rate!
Yeah, there's definitely going to be ramifications coming from that, and it'll be interesting to see if it even comes down. Like even if you go to negative interest rates and you start taxing people on their savings, there's no guarantee that people are going to start lending money because we're not lending money because there isn't money. There's tons of money. It's that there's no growth story now. It's illegal aliens and regulations. So.
Yeah, there's no guarantee that it'll work. In fact, I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people that say it's always going to make it worse. But in the short term, at least you get the shot in the arm. It's like when you're doing drugs. Like you get the high almost every time until you don't one day, and then you take more and more and more, and then by the time you're done, you're overdosed. You know what I mean? Like it's a bad situation.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't even know if we even laid off quantitative easing. I know we stopped, which is. Quantitative easing is buying bonds. So you buy bonds, cash goes out into the market. And if you reduce it, you sell bonds to bring cash back into the market. And I don't know if we've ever started selling bonds. So AD's so bored with this that he had to take his headphones out. So we'll move right along.
Out of my ear, man. Sorry. I'm a mess over here. I can't get my stuff together.
That's okay. Remember that one time you just walked off camera? I think we had a guest on. We didn't even know what happened.
Was that Phil Johnson? It might have been.
Yeah, I think it was Phil Johnson. Actually,
walked off.
Guest to do it. Just, I'm out. I'm out. Mark says Montana has been maskless for a month now. I'd be interested to see what do you mean, Mark? Can you let me know? Does that mean like you don't see masks, or is that like the governor?
Or the government? Yeah.
Governor didn't do anything.
Yeah, because there's maskless that happens ahead of the official maskless. Mm-hmm. The governors just do whatever the people are doing anyway.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Man, but this is another good civic lesson. I'm telling you, this pandemic has been great because especially in Florida, where the governor says no masks, but then you go to the counties and the cities and things like that, and you do have masks because of the governor, or the mayor or the controllers or whatever. So,
yep.
Yeah, that's really interesting. All right, okay. So I wanted to show you this
let's see
video. This is really cool. This is in Poland, and hopefully for those of you listening, I can just explain it to you afterwards. But let's pop this up. It's on Gab. If you're not on Gab, what's wrong with you?
Get on Gab.
Check it out. This is like a 30-second. This is a march in Poland, and so you're seeing a whole bunch of Polish flags. But if you read the captions, maybe I'll read it along for those of you listening. Pride, pride, national pride.
Polish flags, as far as the eye can see.
We don't want aggression in the name of Allah. We don't want rape. We don't want Sharia law. The gospel, not the Quran.
There's a bunch of white supremacists to me.
Pride, pride, national pride. Okay. So they're literally saying the gospel, not the Quran. And that made me just start realizing, like, actually kind of feel shameful as an American, because I would never even hope for something like that at a rally.
It wouldn't even be in your radar.
It wouldn't even be in my radar. Yeah. We have been so conditioned to separate church and religion, even though that's almost the exact opposite of how our country was founded, that when we see another country doing that, we think, oh my gosh, nationalist, white pride, KKK.
Right.
But no, they're actually in a march calling for the gospel and rejecting Islam. Like, oh my gosh, that would be the most amazing thing in the United States.
Crazy, man.
Amazing thing.
I don't know anything about it, but I'm down for people like that, man. Reject. I don't know much about what they're for, so let me just say that outright. But
I'm trapping you.
I am 100% against people publicly saying no. We don't want the Quran to be our standard. We don't want secularism to be our standard. We don't want these things in our public sphere to be the standard. We want the Bible to be our standard. That's what we want. Mm-hmm. You need to be very overt about it,
right?
Because if you're not, then secularism is your standard.
Yeah.
Or just what's it called? How can I polytheism? Polytheism is your standard.
Pluralism,
right? Pluralism, right?
Yeah. And I was thinking, I posted this on Gab probably a couple days ago, but I was thinking about it was when I was listening to CPAC actually, and the whole abortion argument that they were talking about. They had a bunch of ladies on there that were part of the pro-life movement, and so it was a typical pro-life kind of talk. But luckily, one of them actually said, like, we need to define the terms. Like, you're killing your baby. And so I was kind of thankful for that, because honestly, we don't hear that too much in the pro-life conversation. But we're so hesitant, or at least a lot of people are hesitant, to introduce religion into those arguments. Like, it's sinful to kill your child. But what you're doing when you're reluctant to bring in religion, when you're talking about morality and talking about, your baby's life and things like that, is you're failing to identify the opposition as being religious too.
Right.
Like, it's not natural for a mom to kill a baby. So something supernatural in a positive way, but something other than natural course of a relationship, something is changing that course of nature. And it is nothing but a religion. It is either a religion of yourself, it's a religion of the state. It could be a number of idols, but we do such a disservice to ourselves when we feel like we're introducing religion into the argument, when religion's been there all along. We're just starting to preach the gospel and God's word.
I was talking to my brother about this topic just the other day. It's like it's kind of a weird situation, because like we all talk about like idolatry, like in a way that's kind of like, we think we're more sophisticated in our idolatry than they used to be. So in the old days, they used to bow down to statues and be overtly religious, but now we're not like that anymore. That's not the case at all. We are like that. We are overtly religious, but we don't call it that. And so we get to pass, and we do need to, we can't over spiritualize everything to the point where things are now under spiritualized almost. Let's say it's very weird dynamic. It's like, oh yeah. I've got idolatry of comfort, but like I don't actually bow down to a statue. I mean, that's Neanderthal stuff. But actually, like if you look at some of the things that happen, like people do bow down to things. They are doing that kind of stuff, and there are spiritual forces at work here. Like if there's a woman that's killing her own child, there's something demonic going on there. We don't want to over spiritualize that to the point where it's under spiritualized. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
She's got demonic influences on her life. Like, no, people don't just kill their babies for no reason.
Right. Yeah.
And we need to consider that for everything that we see. It's because I'll be honest, like when I saw that video, Matt, like I'm almost programmed to be like, oh, that's Nazis. Definitely.
Yeah.
And so I need to fight that in my mind. Like, okay, why do I think that? Maybe it is Nazis. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But why do I think that? It's because I was taught and I was catechized to think that.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And we've been catechized to think that there's neutrality, that
that's right.
That we can concede ground because we're conceding it to not another religion or not to another false god, but it's just natural. Yeah. And so we've given up so much ground, and we have committed so many sins of denying the lordship of Jesus, maybe not over our own lives, but in the areas and spheres that we have authority over. We've just given it up because, we're not giving it up to another idol per se. We're giving it up to just a manufacturer or immigration or pro-choice. And if we would have realized and never bought that lie, that really there are spiritual forces that we're fighting in Ephesians 6, not to over-spiritualize it, but that is the battle, right? Who is Lord? And if we would have never given that up and have just acknowledged that the whole time, I think we would have been in a lot better place.
Yeah, no, definitely. There was a story this past week where I guess someone said that God's will has no bearing on the Congress or something like that. Do you know about that story?
Oh yeah, it was Jerry. He's a big like donut shaping guy. Jerry Adler. Yes, Jerry Adler. Someone came up, I forgot what it was, but said something to the effect of wanting to pray before something to do with like something not crazy religious, but something like, like let's just have like a religious part to this. And then he said like God, Congress is not interested in God's will.
Here's what it is. It says what any religious tradition describes as God's will is no concern of this Congress. Okay. So people were upset about that, freaking out about that. And I get it because it's like he's overtly saying like, we don't care. I mean, all these religious traditions, who cares? Like it's not of concern of ours. We're concerned with what we say, our Constitution says, and all of that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And people were upset because he just came out and said it. But the truth is, almost every congressperson acts as if that's true.
Yeah.
And they just don't say it. They don't have the balls to say it. But Republican and Democrat, and many Christians who I would be on the side with, I'd go and preach with, the gospel with, would say, well, yeah, but the thing is, like, yes, God's will does have authority, but not like in a very direct way. Like we can't really apply this too directly. And the thing is, like, look, like, even if you don't come out and say it like Nadler does, when Nadler says it, it's like, oh, this is a spiritual battle. Yeah, you're right. It is. Yeah. But when you act like that's true and you don't reference the case laws and you don't say we need to have some equity here, some general equity of God's law and stuff like that, if you're not, then that's still spiritual. That's still spiritual. That's a spiritual fight that needs spiritual solutions. We need to bring the word of God to bear, and we need to be open about it. And they're going to laugh at you, and nothing's going to happen. They're going to say there's going to be more Nadlers. The more you push the scripture at the Congress, there's going to be more Nadlers to say no. We can't do that. Right. But you still have to do it. You know what I mean? You still have to do it.
I wonder how many of those people got outraged over what Nadler said, then went to church Sunday to hear Romans 13.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Right.
Is that not the same exact thing?
Right.
Somehow it's offensive when he does it. I mean, it is offensive. It really is. But there's a lot of Christians, even like you said, that you'd preach the gospel with that call Romans 13 like, oh no, God has no say over how Congress should conduct itself.
The government's in authority here. Anyway, it's like, we've talked many times how it's a misreading of Romans 13, but it's like, but you can't get too mad at Nadler when almost every politician acts as if this is true. He's just saying
pastor.
It. What's that?
And pastor.
Oh man, you said it, not me. You said it, not me.
It's true though. It's true though. Mark says, do you guys listen to John MacArthur's State of the Church event thing? No,
I didn't. No, I didn't. Was it good? Mark, let us know if it was good. Uh-oh. Matt's frozen. Or maybe I'm frozen. I don't know. If anyone's in the comments can hear me, let me know. If not, that means I'm frozen. Yeah. Well, all right. Well, I guess I'm still here. Debbie hears me. Matt's frozen. So I don't really know how to carry the show when Matt's gone. But yeah, no, I think I was talking I was talking to my brother, like I said, about these topics. And it's just it's a really weird situation. Like we know that there are spiritual realities out there, and we know that there's powers and principalities. We know that there's demons out there. Like we all believe it. Like we're not like the Sadducees who didn't believe in that stuff. Like conservative Christians believe in that stuff. But I wonder how often we go through life acting as if it's not true. Like when we go to war with the leftists or whatever it is, we go to Congress, we go to our jobs, we go, whatever it is that we do throughout the day. I wonder often, like, do I really act like this stuff is true? I don't know. Like, it's just a weird thing I've been talking to my brother about, because like we believe that spiritual realities are real, but do we if we don't act like it? I often wonder about that, and especially with things when things get like hard and there's lots of fights and battles. What's up, Matt? I see you, by the way. Oh, now I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
There you go.
All
You're
right,
good.
Sorry about that. Left you hanging.
No worries. No worries. I was trying to carry the show, but
I'm sure you did a great job.
This whole thing with like the spiritual reality of this fight. Like I was thinking, even like the Nate Wilson sons, right? That got arrested, and they're whatever it is,
Moscow, Russia / Idaho.
That's spiritual stuff. Like a city attorney or whatever, whoever charged them, like doesn't just lose their mind one day and say, I'm going to throw the book at these kids putting stickers there. Like there's spiritual things going on there. There's demonic activities there. There's just no question about it.
I was thinking while I was panicking, trying to figure out why my internet wasn't working. I panicked so much, I like put my computer to sleep, and I'm like, oh no, I'm making it worse. It was like a fire drill.
I do that often on Zoom calls where I'm like, oh no, I emailed the wrong person. No.
Yeah. But I was thinking about what you were saying about over spiritualizing. I think that is a tendency to do in the church sphere. And when we talk about things from a sin perspective,
right,
it's almost like it's safer and less convicting or as harsh if I spiritualize my sins.
Yeah, that's so good, man.
On the flip side, I don't think we spiritualize anything enough in the other spheres. I don't think we spiritualize enough in our family life or government. That's
what it is. Okay, this is so helpful to me, Matt.
And I'm glad I lost connection then.
This is our show. This is our show. We're just helping each other out, think through things. Yeah. Because I was talking when I spoke to my brother, I said didn't make sense to me, because what I was saying was we spiritualize it so much that we under spiritualize it. That makes no sense at all. But what you're saying is we spiritualize certain things, and then everything else we under spiritualize. We act like we almost act like the world is godless. Like, oh yeah, the sun comes up, the sun comes down. It's just physics. You know what I mean? Like we almost act, and that's just an example. I just mean every other area of our life. With our sin, though, it's like, oh yeah, I'm just, and I'm not saying that the heart's not an idol factor. I believe John Calvin when I think that's true, but it's like, but also we need to understand that like that sin is also very real. You know what I mean? It's very like it's here. Like we don't want to just put that over in this spiritual, ethereal realm that's not really that real to us. It's interesting because we spiritualize things when it's to our advantage.
Yes.
And then when it's not, we don't.
Yeah. And that's sin nature, right? I mean, that's skewing that from the beginning. Did God really say? It wasn't did God not exist? It was just skewing what was true versus and creating a fake reality. And we do those very things. Even in my life, I think of the spiritual nature of worshiping with my family, the spiritual nature of reading, praying with my family. But on the same token, those are spiritual things. If I'm not doing them, there's very physical consequences that come about that.
So true, man. That's so true.
right? And so like my kid that's 2 who doesn't understand these spiritual things the way we do acts up more when I'm not catechizing him and pushing him towards Christ. I get in more fights with my wife over physical things because I haven't done the spiritual work that I'm called to do as a man.
Right.
Yeah.
This is good stuff, man. This has been very helpful to me. You know, it's almost there's almost like a it's interesting. Like it relates to social justice a little bit too, because I've been thinking lately that some of these guys that they'll say, I'm a racist. I'm a recovering racist, and it's like, and you know what they're doing, like they're using the fake, phony, baloney definition of racism.
Yeah.
But I wonder sometimes if that's almost like a way to like repent of real racism, like the actual, I don't like black people, I'm scared of them, I'd be worried if my daughter, married one, like that's real racism. I wonder if some of these guys that say, I'm a white supremacist, they're actually really racist, but they see this as a way to almost do what we do. We spiritualize this to such a degree that it's almost not even real. Like I'm just going to be a racist to the day I die. And on the inside, they're like, I really am one though. And like instead of like actually repenting and actually doing the work of, hey, I got to get rid of this prejudice in my heart. And they go, well, I'm a white supremacist to the day I die. Like they're almost over spiritualizing it the way we often do. Yeah. Oh, I struggle with lust. I struggle with idolatry of comfort. It's like, okay, but yeah, what are you doing though? Like, are you lazy? Are you looking at porn? Like, what's the actual sin here?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and exactly. It's like we don't want to talk about the actual sin there, but in every other area of our life, it's all the details. It's all the specifics.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with other people. Because like, how do you repent of like, I'm just, I have a sin of comfort. Okay. So what does that look like? How do we hold you accountable?
Right. What is that? What are you saying though? Are you greedy? Like what's going on?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I think about, again, I've been doing this a lot ever since I've gone into the reform world, but I try to think about it back in the terms of idolatry, of what it would actually look like back in the Old Testament.
Right.
And I think a lot of times you're going to another God and sacrificing and trying to atone for your sins the way that God feels that like will satisfy your sins, that the way that God will atone for you. Right. But that's not what our God calls us to do. Our God has a way for us to deal with sin, and any other way is blasphemous, and it is taking the Lord's name in vain, and we need to repent of even those kinds of thoughts.
That's so good, man. That's so good.
So going to the government, I want to push back a little bit on you. Not really push back, but I kind of want to develop further what you were saying today, because I was listening to your show. I listen to it every day. Even though you like, sometimes you don't post them every day, and it kind of feel empty and void in my life.
I'm sorry,
Andy, it hurts. But you were talking about how there is the political fraud that we are in this big scam politically. That's Republicans and Democrats. I 100% agree with you. But then, so what is the therefore of that? That's what I was kind of left with in the show, and I tried to take advantage of you and my co-host to ask you. So, totally, it is a fraud. We admit it, especially after this election. So many people see it. So is it?
What do you do?
What do we do?
Right.
Or is there something to do? Like, what do you think?
Yeah. This is the big question, right? Because you're right. At the end of the day, you have to operate, right? You have to do things. You have to provide for your family and all that. And so I think the question might be behind the question is like, is it time to take up arms? What do we do? Mm-hmm. Do we just let it happen? Let the fall happen? And I don't advocate any revolution or anything like that. I don't do that. I'm not necessarily opposed to it. In other words, I don't think the American Revolution was necessarily sinful. Mm-hmm. A lot of people think that it was. I don't think that it necessarily was. Mm-hmm. And they were revolting over a lot smaller infractions than are currently going on right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think my plan is essentially to deal with the situation as we have it, and to try to avoid the scam as much as possible. Because what they want to do is they want as many people as possible to be reliant on them. They want as many slaves and servants as they possibly can get, because that's how they maintain their power. Like they've got enough slaves that are dependent on them for basic survival. They keep getting elected. They keep getting looked to. They keep getting more and more power. They can keep charging those speaking fees, because they're the ones that are providing the living for everybody. So what I think we need to do is we can't be totally self-sufficient. That's not possible or feasible for many people, but we need to unplug from this as much as possible. And so if you're getting the Biden bucks, for example, let's say you have 4 kids or 3 kids and you have you and your wife and you're getting $7,000 of Biden bucks, right? You do what you have to do to survive. Of course, there are some people that need it for basic essentials. But if you're not one of those people, I would recommend not spending it on a TV or an exercise bike or something like that. I would recommend trying to do something, whatever it is. If you're saving up money to buy an asset or buy an asset, to unplug from this as much as possible, because the last position you want to be in is reliant and dependent on the government, because they have a horrible track record. They will fail you, and you're going to be screwed in the end.
Yeah.
So I don't say, some people say you got a homestead. You got a homestead. I'm not saying that. But
and when you mean homestead, you mean like be self-sufficient, septic
have a
tank
farm,
kind of thing.
Septic tank. I'm not saying you have to do that. Some people want to do that. I'm not opposed to that. But I'm just saying, whatever it is that you do, plan to be as unreliant on them as you can possibly be. Mm-hmm. That's the only thing you can really do, besides revolt.
Yeah, that's true. Someone is saying in the comments that... where did it go? I lost it. No. Okay, here it goes. Mark, if you can justify revolution in 1776, you can justify one today. I don't think you can. If you were
not even going to try.
What?
I'm not even going to try.
I'm not gonna try.
I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying I don't think it's necessarily was sinful. I don't advocate revolution, so I'm not even going to attempt to justify it.
Yeah, I am going to try to justify it. Hold on, I'm just kidding.
I can't wait to defend you.
I would say that, Joe, if you were just looking at the merits, like you were saying, like today the government is far more atrocious than it was back in the day, then I think you could justify it just on that alone. However, the government has grown exponentially far stronger than even, in my opinion, the British Army to the colonials were.
Sure.
That difference, even though the British Army was by far the most superior army in the world at that time, they both had muskets. Today, the government has a lot more than we have. So going back to the whole just war theory and what Jesus talks about, like considering the cost of battle before you go in, there is no way that you could like straight up one-for-one war against the government. There's maybe other ways that you can fight, but you're not going to win on any kind of battlefield whatsoever fighting like physical violence against.
So Matt, let me say what you're saying is we could justify the war, but it would be very foolish to do it.
We could justify the war. Well, I would consider justification as part of the ability to win. Like, I don't think it's justifiable because of that. But I would say if it's just on the merits, based on taxation versus representation and all of the grievances they listed in the Declaration of Independence, I think we're far worse than that.
Sure.
So I would say yes on that point, but no on the point of we don't have the ability to do it.
Yeah,
we don't have the ability to win. And even if we did guerrilla tactics, and this is the other thing, is like, I get pushback on this too, is, well, if the people in Afghanistan can survive, if the Taliban can survive, so could we. One, we don't live like them. Two, most of us would live without electricity. And three, there's no mountains to hide that they can't go to, like in Afghanistan. So like there's so many things that we don't even know how to begin to analyze this. It's not even worth going there.
So Mark makes an interesting point, and I think I agree with him. So maybe it's just a matter of us not being clear with our words, and I'm totally open to that. He says, I think you could justify forming a new government, then defending yourself if necessary. I think that's kind of what we're talking about. Well, we're not talking about overthrowing the United States. Am I right about that, Matt, or are you?
I'm discouraging that kind of thinking. And so then what do? Is you invest locally, not homestead isolated individual families, but you start getting involved in your local elections, your mayors, your city council, your sheriffs, and your governors, and you try to control the states. And we see a lot of pushback from Texas and Florida, even with their attorney generals, where they're suing and they're pushing and just saying no, flat out, no, you go pound sand. We're not doing it. That and then defending that, I think, is a far better strategy, and it's more within the lines where more people will be able to buy in on that too. Absolutely.
Well, I think you're right about the idea of you have to be able to. It has to be a fight you can win too. Like you have to be smart about things. So violent revolution and on a grand scale is very unlikely to be successful. But if you have like little enclaves of hey, we've got this town. and we're just not going to do it. You want us to do masks? We're not doing that. You want us to shut down? We're not doing that either. And it's just like eventually they're going to come for you, and you got to make your decisions on what to do at that point. But yeah, I see what you're saying, and I think, Mark, from my perspective, that's kind of what I was talking about anyway. I wasn't saying like, oh, we should just go to the Capitol and storm it. What I was saying though was we need to say, no, we're not participating in this madness anymore. We're going to form a new state, and they're going to come for us, and we're going to do what we have to do, kind of thing.
Yeah. Or Elwin says, are we considering theonomy? Get my popcorn. I don't think either one of us runs for thinking of theonomy like we just had in the previous conversation. We're saying that everything's religious. We of course want biblical law to be the whatever that looks like, and we're not getting all the answers, and we need people to hash that out. But I don't think either one of us is running from theonomy, even though I hate the term because I think it's butchered.
But Mark, and I'll push back on you a little bit. So I guess I'm just a little curious, like, why couldn't you justify 1776 if you could justify forming your own country and then defending yourself?
There you go.
I'm just curious. I'm not like trying to get you, but like I'm just curious where the distinctions are.
Yeah, that's a good one. And while you say that, I think something that we should really start thinking about doing, like seriously thinking of doing, and I don't know how to do this myself, and I need to research it without being on a watch list where I can't fly anymore. Not that I'm going to be flying a lot because
we're not flying anyway.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if I wasn't on a watch list, quite honestly. Is forming militias though. I really think like that is a Second Amendment right part of owning guns, right? Is to form a militia. If this is not the time to be doing that, I don't know when is. And I say that not in the sense of like we're going to go storm the Capitol like in January 6th kind of thing. What I'm saying is that we need to think about, and I was picturing Braveheart, the movie, where they would, before Braveheart became a thing and the nobles would go, they'd rally form an army, they'd meet the English on the field, and then they would negotiate. They had no intention of, actually doing battle, but they would just show up and they would be in groups and then they would negotiate some favorable terms and then they would go back to living their lives. I think it would be very advantageous for us to have militias in that sense, where when they do come or try, like a Waco or the Bundy situation in Nevada, I think that was their names, the Bundys, where we could have a group of men come and say no. Because even if we would lose the war if it happened, it's not going to be worth them to go and pick on militias of 25, 50, 100 men. Even if they would win, they would lose because the nation would be up in arms. Opposed to an individual who they come knocking on your door and saying, hey, we're taking your son and daughter, and it's just you alone. They'll plow you through and they'll spin it and they'll make it seem whatever they want. So I think there's a lot of wisdom in thinking through the advantages of that. What do you think about that? Is that crazy?
No, I don't think that's crazy at all. I don't think that, do you remember the story of the ranch in Nevada?
Yeah, the Bundy. Wasn't that the Bundys or was that someone else?
The Bundy Ranch,
Okay,
right.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you don't have to go looking for fights. That's not what we're really saying here. But you show up so that we're not just rolling over here for you. Like we don't recognize this fake authority that you say you have. Like we don't do it. And we don't want to fight you, but like, we're not going to roll over. It's kind of like the bully in high school. It's like, when the bully knows that you're going to fight back, they typically don't pick you as the target. They pick somebody else.
Right.
And they maybe they will though, and you'll have to defend yourself, but normally they don't.
Yeah.
Normally they don't. And I've told this story on this show before, I believe. My brother, he was at the nerd table at school, and people would always throw food at him at his table, and all the nerds were there. They would just chuck fries, dip them in ketchup and throw them at them. Mm-hmm. And then one day my brother just stood up and he said, "Enough! Stop it right now," or something like that. Wow. Anyone who does it next, and it never happened again because they were just looking for easy targets, right? And the minute somebody was like there to like defend, it didn't have to be an overwhelming force. They probably could have destroyed my brother if they got all together, but they didn't want that either.
It wasn't worth it to them.
It wasn't worth it to them. And it's like the militias are cool, but the minute you start going to look for a fight, that's when it's all over.
because this is another thing that we have to think about. And it's, again, we're so unprepared for this. We have been so lazy and just not thinking through these things. And I'm saying that myself too, is I feel 20 years behind to where I should be as far as thinking through these different things. But like part of winning a battle is not just the physical, I can shoot better than you or I have better tactics. Right. It's politics, it's image, it's getting people on your side. It's all of those things that you have to factor into. And if you can't win all of that, you're going to lose. Right. That's a lesson we learned from Vietnam.
That's right.
I have a funny story, a bully story too, from junior high. I went to eighth grade. I went to eighth grade for 1 week. And I went to eighth grade for 1 week because I went my first week from private school to public school. It was a really good public school in a really like rich area. And they started a new program that same year where they wanted to integrate problem poor children into the school to make them better, because that's why they're sinners, is because of their environment, you know.
I was one of those poor children in my district.
Okay. So I was there and I was a big kid. I never got picked on because I was that big kid. Yeah. So I was a soft squish. Like I was a total squish weirdo kid. But I was big. I was 6 foot when I was in eighth grade. So I was the tallest kid in the school at the time. And AD gets released into the good school. No, it wasn't AD, but it was someone like AD. And he just got released from juvie. And prison mentality. Yeah. I need to go make a statement to the biggest guy in the room or in the school so no one messes with me ever. Right?
Got it.
And so I was minding my own business, doing my homework, keeping my head down, sitting down before class started. And then all of a sudden, I am hearing the class start, oh, and then bam, this kid takes a stapler, hits me in the back of the head, knocks me unconscious, and just starts like wailing on me like a prison fight. I had the top 3 of my vertebrae shifted out of place. I was unconscious. And anyway, so I didn't go to school for 8th grade year because I milked it up to like it in Zoloft and did a party. Man. But that's kind of what we do too, is either we don't stand up for others, or we're not aware of our surroundings, and we keep our heads down and we let these people rule over us and defeat us without having any kind of posture.
Yeah, that's right.
And so we got to be careful of that stuff, and we need to be thinking through this in a wise way. Okay, so what did Mark say? Did he answer you?
Yeah, he said, and this is fair. You know, he said he thinks he's in the process of changing his beliefs on that. He says he used to be against the American Revolution, but he feels like now he can justify the forming of a new government and a new self-defense. So I think what he had said that was because we were talking about it as just like a revolution where you just, went to go find a red coat to shoot. You know what I mean? Like that's really not how it went down. But yeah, that's fair. Changing his beliefs on that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
So no, but I like that story, Matt, and not because you got hurt, but like because it is such a good point, though. It's like, and this is why we talk, I think, so much, trying to encourage pastors to not consent to these lockdowns, because you're right, Matt. Like, there's so many different aspects of this. Like, do they have the authority to throw you in jail? Well, not technically, but they have the numbers and the ability to do it, so they'll do it. Right. But the optics of that are terrible. Imagine if they just started jailing pastors, like tons and tons of pastors, and they were just not doing nothing but jailing pastors. Like they would lose, I think, a lot of goodwill that political capital normies, because all of a sudden the people that are saying, "Oh, you just have a persecution complex," all of a sudden those normies are like, "Well, they're actually in jail now." All of them, everyone who had church on Sunday was in jail in my state.
Right.
I'm getting the freak out of California or whatever it is. You know what I mean? Like I'm probably next, like that's part of it. And so I think a lot of pastors, like, you got to find your backbone enough to know that sometimes all it takes is a flashy sort of, people criticize Moscow. Oh, it's just publicity stunt. As if that's a bad thing.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
That's not bad. You know why people do publicity stunts? Because they freaking work.
Right.
So I'm not saying that it was just a publicity stunt for them, but if it was, I wouldn't even be opposed to it. Yeah, we're going to go sing some psalms and dare you to arrest us.
Right. Yeah.
And if then you do, and then we make the national news. So we outmaneuvered you that time.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, how do you think the gay pride community has conquered us and ran the table with us for 30 years? They're like 1% of the population. It's because they're really good at publicity stunts.
That's right, man.
That's the only reason.
They've got so much leverage compared to their numbers, and it's because they've mastered controlling this narrative.
Mhm.
And we just don't even play that game typically.
Right. And to our shame. To our shame. There's no reason why we shouldn't be doing that stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, the other point is, like, what you're saying is true right now, where, like, people would start to wake up and say something, but that's not always going to be true if we
Right.
continue to let this go
Right.
down the road. Because
The
remember,
opportunity's now.
the
Yeah.
road we're on is towards Nazi Germany. And I'm not saying we're a bunch of Hitlers and just throwing that term out there, but how did normal people let Nazi Germany happen? It's no one standing up when they should have, when it was easier, letting you go down the road. You're conditioned. And as you get down to it, like, if we ever did really get to the point where, like, a whole bunch of people were in jail and prison, no one's speaking up. They may think there's something wrong, but then they're going to start convincing themselves, like, it's not that bad.
Yep.
You know, kind of like what we do with abortion.
Yeah, totally.
So the fights need to happen now. The publicity stunts need to happen now, because, yeah, you're right. There are going to be people that aren't with us that are going to say, hey, that's too far, my team. Let's not, like, throw them all in jail. But that number is going to get less and less the longer this goes on. So that's a caution for us, right?
Totally. No, it's never going to get easier. It's just going to get more difficult.
Yep.
And we always talk about this on this show, but it bears repeating. The Bible tells us that, you know, if you're faithful with the littler things, you'll be faithful with the bigger things. So you got to start getting those reps in now. You got to start building the muscle now and the backbone, because it's going to be very difficult to go from I've never even been in a fist fight to now I'm in prison and the gang wants their, you know what?
Yeah.
You know, it's very difficult to do that. You know what I mean? So you got to get your reps in now. I'm not saying go get in a fist fight, but, you know, people who have been in a fist fight are more likely to be able to survive a situation like that.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you won't get pushback. You will, but you practice it's like Little League. You go to Little League and then you go to the majors.
Yeah. Exactly right. We all want to be Chris Kyle, Navy SEAL, but we won't go shooting or go to a defense class or a jiu-jitsu class. We all want to have godly families that are doing things like the Wilson's family, but we're not praying and reading ourselves. Like, all of these different things. Like, we want our church to stand up and be men and fight against the culture, but we don't show up to our own men's group or whatever that is, right? We're not discipling younger kids ourselves. It's like, God wants us to be faithful in the little things. And it turns out when you are, it always builds into the Chris Kyles. It always builds into the Wilson type of family. It always builds into those churches that make radical differences. But if we neglect the small things, you're missing steps that are going to get you to the big things. That's just the way it is.
Good stuff, man. I like it. So you want to form a militia. I get it.
I really do want to, like, this is a story. I shared this with you. We were going to talk about it anyways. It's a perfect segue. There was this judge, and I don't know the whole case about it, but because the mother had a picture of herself without a face mask in this one county in Florida, the free state that everyone talks about, took their kid away from them because she was without a mask in a picture. And said, oh, she's one of those anti-science masker types. Like, so going back to the Civil War thing for a second, like, yeah, I don't think we should do that because we wouldn't win. And so therefore it's not just for me. But there are certain things where even if I lose, I'm going to die on that hill for. And these are the types of things that I would. If you take my guns, I'm dying on that hill. Because what happens is concentration camps after that. Like, the only breaks that the left is going to have is that we have an armed populace. So that's the left. My kids, you're not taking my kids for any reason, because I'm not abusive, I'm not sinning, and for any non-sin reason, you're not taking my kids. That's something I'm going to die over. So there are going to be things, and like this happened in Florida today. Like, if that would have happened to me, I wouldn't be on the show. I would be dead.
So let me make sure I understand this. So basically, she was in a custody case. And so, like, he because of the mask thing, he took away her half or whatever of the custody is what happened.
No, I like literally took her away from the kid, from what I understand, for that day.
It's just, I mean, either way, it's insane. But
yeah,
wow,
yeah. And so anyway, so yeah, like that to me, like, you're not taking my kids away from me at all, divorce or whatever.
Yeah.
But then what the good side of it is it didn't have to, like, so anyways, the good side of that was that there was so much pushback on that he recused himself and was no longer going to be part of that court case. So again, that goes to the other thing of it's not all like just shooting bullets. Like there are ways that we can win. Part of that is publicity stunts where there's so much pressure on somebody that they have to recuse themselves because obviously they're not a just judge.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
But yeah, so going back to, yes, I want to form a militia because if someone comes for my kid, I'm going to draw the line and die there. But I wouldn't have to die if I have 25 or 50 faithful men standing at my doorway with me. So too with me, if someone's doing that to someone in my church community or my neighbor, I'm standing in that door and saying no. It's going to be harder for them to do it. In fact, they probably won't do that. They're not going to do that stuff. Yeah.
They probably wouldn't even do it. You see it all the time with like sit-ins and like, people get launched from a company, like a company lays off a bunch of workers and they're like, we're not leaving. We're not leaving until we get our severance or whatever it is. And they just, they just don't leave for weeks and weeks and weeks. And it's like, yeah, it takes some initiative. It takes some, devotion, but you can get things done in all kinds of different ways. And I could just see it right now. Christians were doing that. I could just see the certain ladies, who I'm talking about. That's just another publicity stunt from the Moscow people. Oh, they're just doing it for attention. Oh, they're just doing it to sell books in the media arm. Like, they're going to say it. Who cares?
Right.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Gospel Coalition is going to say, is this really the way to demonstrate the gospel fidelity? Like, who cares what they say?
Right. Yeah.
That's not your concern. Like, they're rolling over and just taking it. They're the guy that gets hit in the mouth and they have to give Bubba from jail their Twinkie every day. Like, those are those guys. Don't be one of those guys. When somebody says, I want your canteen for the week, just tell them no. And if they want to fight you for it, then I don't want to fight you, but I will fight you. You're not taking my canteen. He might hit you in the mouth. He might not, but you just got to be that guy.
Yep.
You just got to be that guy.
Yep, absolutely. It's true. And so there might kind of sound like there's a mixed messaging here, and I don't think there is, where we're saying don't care what they think, but also invest in publicity stunts, which is getting people to care what you think.
Yeah.
But this is the difference in my mind, is that who your target audience is.
Right.
And that's the key, right? So a publicity stunt isn't for the world to believe you and be on your side. That's never going to happen.
Right.
The publicity stunt is to get enough people of who you want to help you achieve your goal, right? There's a goal in mind for the publicity stunt. That's completely different than worrying about how people are going to react to your principle stand or not.
Totally.
And you need to be clear on that.
It's all about the target audience and what your goals are. I'm not trying to please you to determine like my tactics are the most godly tactics ever and I'm pure as the driven snow. I don't care about that. What I want is I want my end result. I want my goal to happen. And if you don't think that having a sit-in is godly, that's on you, fine. But I'm trying to get to a point where people start to take a second and be like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be rounding up pastors and putting them in prison. Like maybe that's a bad idea. I don't know if I'm down for that. Like that's probably a good thing. And then you're going to have the ladies are going to write the thing that say, oh, you just got to do what the government says. Ignore those people because your target audience are the people that are normal and are like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be rounding up pastors and putting them in camps.
Yep. Exactly right. That's exactly right. Mary says, my pastor is not addressing any of the cultural issues or equipping the congregation for persecution. And the leadership decided to dip a toe in social justice. I really want to leave. We've said that before, like it's got to be your last resort. I would highly recommend talking with your pastor about it and talking with your elders about it, or maybe you and your husband, if you're married, to go talk to them about it. What advice would you give?
Yeah, I mean, that's the same thing as always. You want to talk with them. You want to hear them out. You want to tell them what you think about it. You want to plead with them. And if you have to leave, you have to leave. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's hard, but make sure, you have a landing place, because sometimes like, depending on where you're at, it's like selling your house in a hot market. Like people are like, well, my house value's gone up. I want to sell. It's like, yeah, but you got to live somewhere. So like, you got to remember, like, it's the values are up as well on the other end. So you gotta know. So you gotta make sure you're not going to be like churchless and like homeless and stuff like that as well. Because just because your church isn't perfect, you might be in a worse situation if you leave. So just consider all the options. I'm sure you would, but that's my advice.
Yeah, that's really good advice. And think about that when I say this is I think we're coming more and more to a time, and that's what happens, I think, under judgment and then specifically under persecution, if God forbid that happens. And I really mean that, God forbid that happens. But maybe that'll be good for us in the long run, is there's not going to be any middle ground like this kind of church. Like when you say that your pastor is not preaching against persecution in authoritative way, and then not speaking to the culture, not speaking to the different spheres of authority, it doesn't surprise me at all that they're starting to dip their toe in it. And then if you came back next week and said that it was a little farther and they got ankle deep and that progression went on for the next 6 months, I would not be surprised at all. In fact, that's where I would put my money is happening. Is it's going to be more and more clear. And I think this is a benefit, not a drawback, because this isn't changing their church. This isn't changing your elders. This is revealing where they're at. There's not going to be this middle ground. Either there's going to be people preaching against the culture, preaching for repentance, or there's going to be people that become the state church. There's not going to be any middle churches anymore.
And you have a conversation. It's like, pastor, hey, I noticed you have not talked about some of these things, the pastor in Canada and stuff like that. I'm really worried that that's coming to the United States. Like, I think the church could be encouraged in that way. Like, what do you think about that? And you'll see where he's at. You know what I mean? Like, he'll be like, oh, that's just a persecution complex. Well, then you know what you're dealing with. Or he'd most likely say, I don't want to be too political and this and that. And then you've got a conversation there. It's like, well, I know you don't want to be political, but like, this is like affects our lives though. Like I got to go to work and they might make me sign the gay statement. Like, what do I do now? You know what I mean? Like, I need help navigating this. Like, and if you go to them in a spirit of humility like that, where it's like, I'm worried about this, like it would really mean a lot to hear where you're at with some of this stuff. Cause this is scary stuff. If that's where you're at, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, Mary, but that's what I would do. Talk to them. I'm concerned about this. Where are you at with this?
Yeah. I think that's great. And I think that'll make things clear. Whenever, to me, in my mind, whenever I've had an issue and I've gone to talk to my pastor or elders about it, it has made things abundantly clear. Either I was wrong or I misunderstood and I had to repent, or I had to, I had to say, like, oh, I was wrong. Or it was clear that, okay, I don't want to be submitted under these people anymore. I need to find another option. Okay, we got some super chats. Thank you guys for the support. Habakkuk 2:14, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. #postmill @Matt. I'm never going to become post mill because most of our super chat money comes from trying to convince me to be post mill. Hey, we got Nathaniel. Thanks for the show, guys. 80, I always suspected you were into Big Bear. Do you think he's a believer needing discipleship or unbeliever? Who's Big Bear?
Owen Benjamin. So yeah, Nathaniel. Yeah, I've mentioned him on videos, here and there, and I think he's hilarious at times. I think he's not that funny at other times. So as far as your question, I don't listen to him enough to really know. Like, there's only certain topics that I do. Like when he talks about NASA and like flat Earth stuff, I think that's so hilarious. I love that. When he talks about, sometimes he'll do like movie reviews and stuff like that. I like that stuff. The stuff I heard from him about theology, I don't think he's a believer. You know what I mean? But I don't listen to it too much. I only listen to him to laugh, and I like his homesteading stuff too. That stuff is interesting. So I would say I've heard some things about some of the stuff he said about theology, which would say he's definitely not a believer. But I think, honestly, if the boys in Moscow could hook up with him and set him straight, that'd be amazing, man, because he's hilarious. He's got such backbone. I love that. I admire that about him. Like, he'll tell you exactly what he thinks, and he's not worried about if you think he's a psycho because he's a flat earther. He doesn't care. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think he's hilarious at times. So I'm sorry if that's kind of a weaselly way to answer your questions. I personally, the stuff I have heard, like, I'll give you a couple examples. Like, I've heard him talk about the Bible, which he believes, but then he's like, there's some stuff in there that he doesn't, and he goes with the Council of Nicaea or whatever it is that changed the Bible or whatever, and like that stuff is like, well, it's either authoritative or it isn't. You gotta pick a camp here. Yeah. So that's the extent of what I've heard. I've heard some pretty wild things in the comment section of the videos where I mention him, and if it's true, I don't look into it. But if it's true and he believes some of the stuff about the Trinity that I've heard in the comments, then he's definitely not a believer. But I just don't know. So sorry, man. But I think he's funny, and I'm not ashamed that I watch his show sometimes.
There you go.
His stuff on NASA is hilarious, by the way.
I think I've seen you share videos of him on your show before. That's good. Oh, it's really good. Hey, Debbie Mason, thank you so much for your super chat. That was really generous of you. I really appreciate that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and that reminds me, last week I had super chats telling me to go watch this YouTube documentary, and it's slipping my name right now, but I did go watch it. And I have to say, it's not as convincing as people made it seem it was going to be. It was like, what was it called? Someone in the chat. I think it was Nathaniel who recommended it to me.
Which one?
Last time. It was Nathaniel, you got to help me out here. I forgot the name of it. But it had Doug Wilson in it. But it was a post mill I forgot what it was. It doesn't matter. Anyways, I see this is my problem with documentaries just in general is they seem totally one-sided to me because even when there's like a counter argument filmed, you most of the time can still see the bias of the producer who's putting it all together. And to me, like I felt like the argument were kind of characterizations of that I don't hold to. And so like the arguments just didn't really ring true to me. And even like with Doug Wilson, like I've heard Doug Wilson be more convincing about post mill, just him talking outside of the pre-mill context where he's all cut and stuff into it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'd love to talk about it more with people. I love having the conversation. It's not that big of a deal to me, honestly. Like I'm not trying to get post mill people to stop being post mill because the result of that is what I think a godly result for the most part. So I'm good with that. But I would say this, that Habakkuk 2:14, like pre-mill, baby, that believes the same thing. That's just going to happen in a millennial. It's going to happen in a millennial reign.
Like a millennial, like me. I'm a millennial.
Like us. Yeah. So, thank you. My wife chirped in on here. On earth as it is in heaven. That's what it was called. As
there
earth
you go.
as it is in heaven.
There you
She was
go.
watching it with me. So this is a funny thing. AD, you might find this funny. No one else might. Being a podcaster is my wife often is listening to the show. Like she's on the side of the set or whatever. You can't hear her. And she always wants to correct me. But she doesn't know if like I'd be mad about it or not. Like I don't want to ruin your show. Like, babe, just tell me if I did something wrong.
I think that'd be funny. There's a guy that I watch. He has a live show every now and then. His name is Lionel Nation, and his wife is always there with him off camera as well. And oftentimes she does do that. She interjects, and you can kind of hear what she's saying, but not really. And he'll just stop the show and start talking to her. You know, it's really good. I actually think it's kind of endearing. So Kelly, do it.
Yeah, I actually really like it. I started calling her Mrs. Producer. So that's her new name. I don't know if Micah is making fun of me or not, but puts premillennialism equals Habakkuk 2:14. Thank you very much. Case, I'm just going to take that as serious. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So guys, if you want him to watch a video that you think will convince him, send him a super chat. And tell him which video it is. I might send a super chat in the next episode.
Yes, do that because you're really going to be paying yourself because I think it's your account that's hooked up to it. So that'd be even funnier. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for everyone who's supported us with super chat. Those of you on Patreon supporting us, it's just such a blessing. You guys help us cover our costs to do this. We love being here and being part of the show. We'll talk to you next week. God bless.
God bless.
Oh, we didn't do an intro for the show either.